We're trading ASFX, now doing some crude oil. I know you do some RBOB. What's your favorite trade, Deanna? If you had to say, this is the trade I'm going to take for the rest of my life, what does it mean for the market to be at a premium or discount? And how would you start learning about premiums and discounts? What does that look like? I see a lot of really good traders not taking trading super serious, not shirt and tie, not like corporate. They're very like loose and in the flow. How do you view that? Like, how serious should you take your trading?
So I actually made $4,000 in like the space of 3 days. So I was like, oh, man, this is easy. No problem there. Of course, what happened the next week, I lost the $4,000 and then some. So it was like, I blew the account. So I was like, wow, okay, so maybe not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Then it's usually the leading cause of what I call muppetiness in trading, where you just lose it completely. And then at the end of it, people are like, it's almost like it wasn't me trading. Well, it's because it wasn't. It was the primal part of you.
Some of the people in the comments will always rip me up when I say this. They're like, no, I trade this 8 EMA cross or this VWAP. It's like,
it works every time.
No, nothing works every time. Anyone that says that, I'm like, oh, this guy's been trading for a week. He has no idea.
Exactly. It's like, just wait.
Just exactly. Wait. You'll learn. Right. What's up, boys? Today, I've got a special guest. Deanna from Market Stalkers is here. Finally, I know a lot of you have been asking to have Deanna on the show, and we talk about everything, including Topstep, her trading strategies. She was a professional musician turned trader, how that transition happened. We talk about all of it. You're going to love this episode. Just want to give a big thank you to Deanna, to Topstep, to our sponsors, and of course, to you guys, our listeners. Make sure you're subscribed, and now let's get into the podcast. The sponsor of today's episode is Top One Trader. If you've been a listener, you know Top One has been a sponsor for a while, and that's because they continue to deliver. And there's two factors that I think separate them from all the other CFD prop firms out there right now. Now, they are a top 30 firm, and if you look at all of the other top 30 firms, this is not happening anywhere else. Number one, payouts in an hour or less, as fast as 8 minutes. It's crazy. It's like almost unbelievable. And also customer service that they actually answer your question when you hit the live chat in as quick as 60 seconds. Some of these firms, we won't mention names, take 2 weeks to get back to you. So when it comes to an industry that is very competitive, where you can get funded with so many different firms, you've got to find those standout features. All the challenges are basically the same price. All of the rules are basically the same. But where Top One separates themselves, like I said, is in payout speed and reliability and customer service. So if you're looking to get funded with CFDs, check out Top One Trader. Use the link down below or flying in above the screen. That'll save you some money. The code is ASFX. That's going to save you 30%. We appreciate them for being a sponsor. Now let's get back to the show. Traders, welcome back. I've got a very special guest in the building. Market Stalkers is here. Deanna is in the house, and I'm super excited for this conversation. Deanna, how you doing?
I'm very well, Austin. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
I am so excited for this. The audience at Topstep TV, as I was telling you before we started the recording, they are asking for this. So I'm really hoping we get some good response. If you're listening here to the beginning of the episode, make sure you stay through till the end. At the end, I want to open it up to questions from you guys. If you want to put those in the comments on YouTube, so that way when Deanna and I sit down for part 2, we can dive into some of those specific questions that you guys have, because we're going to touch a lot of topics, I think, today, right, Deanna? We're going to talk about your background a little bit, trading strategy, but let's kind of lay the land, give a lay of the land for everybody. So a lot of people know you were a professional musician. As you made that transition into professional trading, can you just talk to us a little bit about what that looked like, how you found Topstep, and how that relationship kind of started to flourish?
Sure. So, yeah, I did music since 1994, and I was a pop and rock musician, even though I was classically trained as well. Never used the flute degree that I had. You know, I went into alto sax and guitar, and that was my life for a very, very long time. And then sort of as the credit crunch started happening, we noticed the quality of the gigs had started to degrade quite rapidly. And I think it was a number of things for me, probably the fact that you're constantly jumping on planes, you know, your skin is dry, you're always tired, your ears are buzzing. And as I got a little bit older, I was like, I'm not sure I can keep doing this for decades and decades. So I was already, it was kind of already seated in my mind that I needed to find something else to do. But at that point, I didn't know what to do. And at one point, because of the credit crunch and because of everything, one of my friends who is a trader, he said to me, hey, why don't you try trading? And I was like, what, me? I suck at maths. Like, what are you talking about? There's no way I can do that. And he said, no, it's not necessarily maths. It's like, yes, it's some numbers, but mainly it's like patterns, and you're a musician. So you should be pretty good at patterns and self-discipline. So we kind of got to talking. We were in a bar. So, he kind of cracked open his laptop and started showing me the candlestick charts. And I was like, oh my God, this looks like music notes. It looks like music sheet. So I need to know everything about this as soon as possible, like yesterday, right? So he goes, I'm happy to show you some basics. So right at the beginning, he taught me the value of a good trade location, and he was kind of looking at it from more of an institutional side. So it's like, where would, the risk be lower? You're always looking for big risk reward. And I suppose that was like the makings of a supply and demand strategy, effectively looking for the large institutions that have already made their mark on the chart and just kind of trying to use those as orientation points. So that's where it all started. But, my very first trade, just like anybody else coming from, a completely random background, totally unrelated to finance, I was like, right, I'm going to put like 500 in a brokerage account, put it all on like Intel or something. So I actually made $4,000 in like the space of 3 days. So I was like, oh, man, this is easy. No problem there. Of course, what happened the next week, I lost the $4,000 and then some. So it was like, I blew the account. So I was like, wow, okay, so maybe not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And it just kicked off my curiosity. I'm somebody who doesn't do anything halfway. So I just started researching, testing, back testing. And then obviously I had my friend who was always there to try and call him to see what he thinks. And as we sort of spoke, I realized how much I didn't know. He also told me about back testing levels. So I went through all of the normal stuff like RSIs and moving averages. And immediately I realized that's not for me, because it was too, I didn't know the reason why I'm taking a trade, and I have to explain to myself why I want to be in a trade. If I don't know the reason, I do very stupid things. And I think that's very true for most people. So 100%. As I started to grasp more concepts about, the good trade location, I started doing swing trading. And just like you, I was actually trading Forex for about first 5 years. And I did really well. I did pretty well in euro dollar. That's all I traded. Held the positions anywhere from like 2 weeks up to 2 months. But then 2012 rolled on and we had the European austerity measures. For a while, it was pretty fun, but then the liquidity dried up. So I spent like the whole year trying to go down to an intraday time frame after trading on a 4-hour and daily chart for so many years. And I was like, this is not working. What is going on? And,
intraday trading on Forex is very difficult.
Intraday trading on Forex, terrible. We went from euro dollar moving like 150 pips per day, suddenly like 30, 40.
Yep.
And you would just be sitting there going, is my internet on? Like, what's going on here? It was so slow. So I was looking for a way to find something else to trade. But at the same time, I knew nothing about futures. And then I sort of started digging, and everybody was saying Chicago, it's like the prop hub of trading, and, that's where it all started. So I thought to myself, well, maybe I should find like some kind of a program to go to, and maybe they'll teach me how to do it, because obviously I can't do it myself. And I found a company, they're no longer in business, but yeah, back then I paid, quite a lot of cash to get into like a program. And at the end of that, you had the chance to trade the funded account. And it was only like a 20K account, very tight risk limits. And that was when I started hearing about market profile. I was already using like average daily ranges. But then as I learned more and more, I started modifying different strategies. And it probably took me maybe another year before I really kind of started getting an idea of what intraday trading should be. But luckily, after the first sort of mess ups of the first sort of 2-3 months, I started turning a corner. I started being profitable, and I actually made a killing that first year. It was like a complete turnaround. But there was a very different thing there. So I I came in there going, Euro futures, that's what I'm going to do. And they said, well, we don't really have a space on the Euro desk, but you can trade ES. I had no idea what ES was. I was like, what,
Really?
what's that? Yeah, I had no idea. I'd heard about S&P 500, but I've never heard it referred to as ES. So they put me on an equities desk, and I tried to trade it, but it was so slow back then. The ES was moving like 12 to 14 ticks in a day. So I was like, well, this is another stupid thing that doesn't move. I'm like, I'm just going to go jump off a bridge. Like, no, thanks. And the guy was like, okay, well, how about maybe we can put you on crude oil or something? And I'm like, you can trade crude oil. I was so green, man. Like I knew nothing. So they introduced me to crude oil, started doing my analysis, and it was so technical. It followed my 4-hour zones to a T. It was very reactive to the average daily ranges, and it had a structure to it that remains to this day. Now, I'm somebody who likes to journal a lot. Like, I'm a total nerd when it comes to data and analytics, and I love it, absolutely love it. So I started writing down all the stuff that I was observing as crude oil was moving. And then I started finding some commonalities. So more and more, I would see that at a particular time of day, the moves actually fail. So I started fading those. And then I started finding confluences around like the levels that I wanted to see those failures at. So all of that kind of started shaping into what is now the market stalkers method. But it took time. It wasn't like, oh yeah, just overnight D sits down and suddenly you're perfect at trading crude oil. It's always a challenge, and it's always a never-ending journey of tweaking things. And it's not a linear process by any means. But that was basically my first step into the futures industry, and I've never left. Here we are.
I love that.
So obviously,
when did you find Topstep?
So this is the thing. I was never planning to move to the States permanently. It was just like for the apprenticeship. Then I was going to come back. I had my husband. I had the dogs here. I had 2 dogs at that point. So I was like, okay, I can't do the Chicago winter. That's just not for me.
No, me neither.
It's terrible. Yeah, it's
terrible.
so cold. So as soon as the winter came, you'd have to get up really early. And I usually like doing a workout before I actually go to trade. So I was getting up at like 4 a.m. to go do a workout. It was so cold. It was
in the cold, in the snow, in the ice.
Horrible.
And the Chicago people are crazy. They act like it's not cold. They're like, no, ride the scooter, go to the gym. It's like, are you crazy, bro?
Like my face is gonna like fall off. Like, what are you talking about? So I scampered back to London. And then I looked around for some prop firms there, but it wasn't the same. Like all of the prop firms were looking for quants at that time. This was like 2013, 2014. Yep. And then I kind of started Googling, Chicago firm remote, and Topstep came up. So I was like, what's this then? Ooh, this looks good.
There you go.
So obviously I signed up, and I became the first female to pass one of their combines.
Wow.
I didn't actually know this until last year when Eddie told me. And he said, well, yeah, why did you think we were interviewing you? And I was like, I don't know.
That's amazing.
That's why. So our relationship kind of between Topstep and myself goes back many, many years now. And it was awesome. It was a great way to just sit at home, and it got a bit lonely after a while. So I did try and find another office job. But that was it. I had the bug, I got infected, and, I've never left the futures industry. I absolutely love it.
Here we are. So I love all that information. Thank you for giving that to everybody, because I do think some of the people maybe didn't know that about you. Maybe they didn't know. Are you born and raised in London?
Hey guys, I just want to let you know the free futures course that I put out a few weeks ago has been crushing it. We've had over 1,200 people sign up already. We have over 150 positive reviews. So if you're sleeping, if you're living under a rock, now is the time to grab this free futures course. I'm putting the link in the description. There's no gimmick, no catch. Go to whop.com, WHOP.com/ASFX, and you can grab the free course for yourself. If you watch it, leave me a review. That's all I ask. Now let's get back to the video.
No. So I was born and raised in Belgrade, Yugoslavia in 1980. So long time ago. So when I was born, it was still a different country. And then obviously we had the civil wars when I was a teenager.
Yep.
And my parents sort of had connections with London. My sister was born there or here. And effectively, I've always had somebody in my family living in London. So we used to do these like summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of my second hometown sort of thing.
Yeah.
And when the the time came when I kind of got sick and tired of the whole Belgrade, Serbia wars, NATO bombing. And I was like, you know what? I can't really do this anymore. So when I was 20 years old, I decided to move to London permanently. So off I went, and I did go to university here as well. But yeah, I'm a naturalized British citizen.
Nice.
And yeah, so no, you probably wouldn't know by my accent because I kind of grew up speaking English. And
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't really tell exactly where you're from. Have you ever thought about coming to the States? Have you ever thought about doing a longer period of time over in the States to live here, or no, not pulling in enough yet?
The hours are weird. The hours.
Why do you say that?
Well, because I'm like, I used to be a night owl. I used to be a musician. So for me, being up in the morning, like, I'm functional, but my brain is just like, no. If you watch my London sessions on Topstep,
I did.
I'm talking. I am talking,
but it's not the same that we get you now. Once we get it going,
no, absolutely, yeah. I kind of wake up at about 3 p.m. and I'm like, right, okay, now we trade. So if I had to like trade that early in the morning, my brain is just not working properly. It's like very slow. I need a ton of coffee to get going. So it's just something that I've never managed to change about myself. And trust me, I've tried like so many years. I'm just not a morning person. And if I were to live in the States, I would have to become one.
You have to be.
Yeah,
no doubt. Think about the people that live on the West Coast. They have to wake up at like 5 if they're lucky. Crazy. It should be earlier. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way as you. Great info again, Deanna. So do you miss playing music?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I still like to do a little bit of playing here and there, but I don't miss the going to the gigs, lugging all the instruments very late.
See, that's what people forget, right? They think you just show up and you just play. Only like, a couple of people do that. No, the rest of us, you got to lug the gear, pack it in, take it out. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. I had a drummer who was carrying a carpet everywhere. And very frequently we would have to, because, you slip if it's a slippery stage. So he would have like a piece of carpet all the time everywhere. And we would end up carrying that for him because he's like, well, I'm carrying drums and stuff. Can you help? And then you're just lugging things all the time. You just feel like a roadie. And then you have to do the gig, and then you have to do everything at the end of the gig. So that's the part that I don't miss. But I do miss, the actual performing part.
Yes.
It will be nice to, get back to that at some point. But for now, I'm pretty content where I am.
It's funny. I am scarred by the smell of garbage cans. Like, when you're out the kitchen door of a venue or out back and it smells like dumpsters.
It's horrible.
Every time I think of that or I smell it, I go back to my days of being a roadie, packing the gear in. So it is, it's like we were saying before the recording, it's just a totally different lifestyle. And I think it's interesting. And I want to know from your perspective, like, what parallels have you seen from that career translate into trading? It must be all personality based, right? So I'm curious to see, like, what similarities do you see?
There's personality, but there's also like methodics of playing. Like you play instruments, so you can't just, take a new instrument and start playing, really well.
True.
You have to spend time practicing, repetitions, more practice, and
learn
then
the
you
key,
get good.
Learn the scales.
Everything, yeah.
All that,
and to me, trading has a big parallel with that side. So you have to find something that is repeatable. And then there's the big self-discipline thing. As musicians, you have some DJs, musicians who are, getting drunk and doing drugs and stuff. But for the most part, the level that I was playing at, everybody was like super serious. Because it was like more like corporate stuff. We worked for an agency, and you can't turn up and get smashed and then do a gig. Yeah, exactly.
They'll replace you.
Will. Yeah. And it's just not a very nice thing to do because other people are like, oh God, who's this idiot,
Right. You let the bandmates down. You show up drunk. Everybody's like, what are you doing? Right.
Exactly. So, it's not like the Rolling Stones and, everybody being on it and everybody having fun and everything. In fact, there was a lot of moments where we would finish the gig and everybody would just go back to a hotel room or the tour bus. Nobody stays out. Very, very few times did we actually go out after. Done. Yeah, exactly. Right. You've been traveling all day. It's just, you're done. You just don't want to do anything else. And people have a very different idea. Now, the self-discipline part is a big thing. So as a musician, you have to kind of force yourself to do some very boring things over and over. But because we're all so infected by it, we don't see it as work. And in trading is the same thing. You have to do a lot of observations, a lot of journaling, a lot of analytics. Then you have to stare at some numbers. I was an Excel spreadsheet queen for many years. I have a software development company now that codes all my lovely indicators for me, so that's pretty cool. But it was probably about 8-9 years before I could actually afford to commission those. So it was a long journey for me. And up until then, it was all just me doing it in Excel. I even learned how to code in Python because I needed some sort of utilities that did not exist at the time. And, so from that point of view, there's a big parallel where you have to track your progress very methodically in order to make any progress at all. And I think that's one part that people forget about trading. Everybody just wants to sit down, click a button, and, expects to be a millionaire like yesterday. It doesn't quite work that way. So there's a huge kind of parallel with music. It's like somebody saying, today I'm going to start playing, the piano, and then tomorrow I'm going to go and do the Carnegie Hall concert.
If only.
Yeah, you can, but nobody's going to watch you.
Right, exactly. No, that's a great answer. I think the self-discipline is something that even like you would see the same crossover from like athletes that become traders or people that were in the military that become traders. It's the self-discipline that becomes a clear differentiating standout factor. So it's a great answer. Let's transition a little bit. So that's a great background on you. I know the people listening are going to be biting at it now. Like, let's get into the trading stuff, Austin. So let's talk about strategy. You mentioned a little bit, some indicators that you use. You mentioned that you were trading ES at first, now doing some crude oil. I know you do some RBOB. What's your favorite trade, Deanna? If you had to say, this is the trade I'm going to take for the rest of my life, what's now, August 2024, what's the favorite trade?
It's after a gap fill. So we open with a fairly sizable gap. It goes all the way up to the value area outer edge from the previous day, and it also lines up with average session range high or low. That's like my absolute favorite. If that's the only thing I had to trade for the rest of my life, that would be it. I absolutely love that because at that point, after a gap fill, you have an extended move and then it sort of runs out of steam. So if that move is extended enough, you then have a very good chance at a mean reversion trade, which is what that is. So I love my mean reversions. Absolutely love it. I'm a contrarian by nature. I think you have to be as a trader. So I try not to chase moves. So my favorite setup is always going to be something along the lines of a mean reversion trade.
Got it. Great answer. You talked about market profile a little bit too. I know I've talked to a couple of my other guests who use market profile. They always talk about these terms, premium and discount. Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit, because I don't speak in those terms. Can you educate me on that? And because why I'm a little confused on it, there's going to be some of our listeners that trade ICT and these newer kind of terminology concepts that are really not new. They're just rebranded, but they also use that terminology of premium and discount. So what does it mean for the market to be at a premium or discount? And what would you say to some of the listeners that want to learn more about that? Of course, they can follow you, but like, how would you start learning about premiums and discounts? What does that look like?
Yeah, so to me, it's all about the distribution curve and how far or near are we in relation to it. Distribution curve in market profile is referred to as the value area. That's what it is. It's just, has a different name. But the entire market profile is the study of effectively how price behaves when it's away from value and when it's inside value. So when we are inside value, it means we're in balance. And of course, anything can happen, like Hogue always says, but there is a high statistical chance that on an inside day, you're going to have a range-bound day. It's not going to be that great for trading. So that's something that I would say is not very good if you're looking for that value trade. But if you're away from value, not too far, because then that's a reprice in my eyes, but just far enough away to create that mild imbalance, that's something that would be a good trade, a cheap trade to go back to value. So back to the mean, effectively.
Sure,
so that's
to
how
fill that
I look
imbalance.
at it. Yeah. But on the other side, I've seen some people talk about, we opened below value just a little bit, so I just want to keep like going against that because it's below value. Well, no, that's not the right way to look at it, because if we're just below value, that means we're still having that imbalance to the short side. So in fact, we should be going short, not going against that open. I call it the open sentiment, and I base a lot of my decisions in relation to how far are we opening away from value? So are we close by? Can we have a potential for a special situation, where you go into the value area and then accept those prices from yesterday? Then you can have a momentum trade through that value area, and you expect rotation all the way to the other side. So there's a lot of stuff that seems like it's super complex, but when you have those basically three orientation points: the value area, first hour of trading, known as the initial balance, and then those initial balance extensions, that can give you a lot of information so that you are not guessing, but just reading what's going on. And Market Profile is frequently criticized for using the 30-minute time frame, but a lot of the events that we see, they happen in real time. You don't have to wait for the candle to close inside there or here, or to fail back into IB.
Sure.
It's it's to do with how well is the auction doing. Like, once we do a breakout, are we sustaining that move? Or is it just struggling and kind of, failing to go further? It's a very basic piece of information that many people...
And it's very reactionary. It's not like...
It is totally reactionary.
Very reactionary.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the initial balance, first hour of the day, but I also see you trading the London session. So what assets are you trading at what times of day?
Yeah, so for the London session, my favorite thing to trade is something we don't have on Topstep yet, which is DAX.
Ooh.
Yeah, love DAX.
That'll be big.
Yeah, so I've been trying to get Patak to get it in, and they are working on it. So it's going to come at some point by the end of this year. I know it's a little bit problematic because the DAX ticks are in euros, and our dashboards are all in USD.
Dollars,
so they're having a bit of a bottleneck there. But yeah, generally it's the products, especially when you have DAX VIX. When it goes above 17, it tends to bring really smooth moves. Like, that's one of the products that you can really size up on and not worry about, slipping you 50 points for no good reason, like NQ does, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, It's very, very smooth. Like, it moves a lot, but it's not as crazy, and it's not. And does DAX
and NQ kind of move similar? I've heard that before.
Yeah. So I would say that it probably moves more similarly to ES. So sometimes I will have both charts open, and I will see what ES is doing. What levels do we have? London can be a little bit slow for some of the US equities, but it's still a good reference point. You have London specific areas that are equally reactive. However, you need something that really moves. So this is where DAX comes into play. And it's a great product. Recently, I've been trying to trade a bit of copper for London because we don't have DAX yet, and it's okay. But yeah, I wouldn't be going.
A lot of people are talking about.
London.
People are saying copper is like the next metal that they want to invest in, that they think is going to double or triple in value because you need it for all this stuff. So I haven't heard too much of the day trading of copper, but I've heard a lot of people investing in copper. So that's interesting. So that's London session. What about New York session? Like, what do you do in New York session mostly?
So New York session, I like to stick to crude oil. This year has been a little bit odd for crude oil. Instead of geopolitical events bringing huge moves in crude oil, it's been fairly range bound and very inconsistent. So I've kind of tried to find something else, and I found gasoline futures, RBOB. So that's pretty liquid, and that looks like NQ. It really can be a little bit messed up. Yeah.
Interesting.
It can be super slippy and just absolutely crazy. It does like 500-600 ticks in a day with no problem. Yeah, so it's a monster, but that's where the challenge lies. So I'm still working on really getting the feel for it. And I don't trade it without crude oil chart open, because I don't think it's one of those products that is just like on its own. You have to have some sort of a reference, and because crude oil is the initial product from which gasoline comes from, it will naturally have a very high correlation. So that's kind of my favorite thing to trade. I've also traded things like YM. I trade ES towards the end of the day. So even though I don't trade it maybe during the main part of the session, power hour, I love it. Like that's my instrument of choice.
What do you like about it then? Why specifically?
I like it because you get a couple of things happening. So you get the bond market that closes, because it closes a little bit earlier. So all the bond volume that people who are in bonds, they're like, well, what are we going to do now? So they go and trade equities.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So you get extra volume, extra influx that comes in. So that's one. You have the MOC orders. I've seen you trying to work out how to
Trying to
take
figure that
together.
out.
Have you seen David Green that said
No,
that
but
actually,
I saw him yesterday talking about it.
Yeah. So he was saying that there are actual services that will tell you that MOC number several times per day. And it comes
Really?
out to like, yeah, I think the first one is like, I don't know, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and then again towards the end of the
So then
actual
that's
market.
funny you mentioned that. I was looking at, do you know Pax on Twitter? Have you seen Pax before?
Yes, Pax.
Pax
Yeah,
was talking about this before. He was saying at 3:50 Eastern, something executes with MOC. Then at 3:55, he was saying also something happens. And then the last 30 seconds, even more something happens. So there's a lot to be made at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you only trade for like, I've got people who work full time, you know, through my coaching, and they're like,
great opportunity
I
for
can't
them.
trade. Yeah, and I was like, well, just trade the last half an hour. Like there's plenty of movement on a lot of the days. And a lot of them were like, oh my God, I didn't know that. I thought it all ends. And I'm like, well, what are you looking at?
Yep.
Just open the chart.
So I have a lot of people similar that are working, and then they're also trying to transition. Also, I have a lot of guys that are Forex to futures. None of my guys are missing Forex. Everybody loves futures. And me neither. I mean, when I switched over this year, it was one of those moments where I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? The market is just so much better. It just, in so many ways, including these opportunities like later in the day, you know, that's not something you would ever think. Forex pairs, they tell you by noon, it slows down, right?
Hey guys, really fast, I just want to share something with you. It's very interesting. We've seen more people in the last 4 months in our mentorship pass combines, pass trading challenges, and get payouts more than we've ever seen in the last 4 years of running this program. It's mind-blowing. So something is going on, whether the markets are changing, the prop firm challenges are getting easier, our coaching ability is getting better, the environment of being in a group of like-minded traders is feeding people to grow faster. I think it's a culmination of all of those things put together, but the Black Shirt Club is popping. If you don't know what the Black Shirt Club is, this is our private mentorship group. I'm going to put a link in the description for you guys to check that out, and I'll also put a link there for you to book a call with me. If you're looking for someone that's going to hold your hand and help you not only pass a funding challenge, but see your first payout, book a call with me and let's see if you'd be a good fit. We don't bring everybody into the Black Shirt Club. Honestly, it's because of the workload that we ask you to do. But if you're someone who is really taking this seriously and you want to jumpstart your learning or maybe catch up after you've been spinning your wheels for a while on your own, book a call. It's 10 minutes with me. It's free. Let's see if it'd be a good fit. Let me see if I can help you. If not, we'll part ways and maybe cross paths in the future. But so far this year, it has been incredible to see the success of our Black Shirt Club members, and I want to pass that on to you. So use the link, book a call, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I actually did a video probably about 2 years ago now on my YouTube that says why Forex sucks in 2022.
I mean, you're not wrong. When did you start the YouTube channel? When did you start sharing content about trading?
That's a story. So when I was still working in prop firms, I always had people around me asking me questions. It's like, hey, Dee, how do... Because I had this rather unfortunate nickname because of the way I was calling levels, and purely because those are some of my levels that, you know, there's statistical averages that will bring some sort of a reaction. Even if it's not sustained, you're going to get something out of it. So I would be saying, oh, you're going short on ES. Yeah, just watch like whatever it was back then, like, 35-25, because it's it might turn, and it would hit it and then turn around. They would be like, wait, have you got a crystal ball or something? And I'm like, no, it's average daily range low. Just don't, don't short into it.
Right.
So I got a nickname, Wicked Witch, which I didn't think was very nice.
I mean, so you kind of take it as a compliment, but I get what you're saying for sure. But it's like you knew, it was like you knew the levels better than them, so they were kind of jealous. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. No, it was all kind of
it was all good. I mean, come on, you're a female in a business with a lot of guys. I'm sure you've heard a lot of shit talking over the years.
Oh,
like, that's,
for sure.
That's what this industry
prop
is.
offices were never known as being PC, right?
Politically correct. No, definitely not.
It's terrible.
My group makes comments all because the way we run our business, my wife and I do everything. So we have a couple of employees, but it's a small business. And my guys in the group all the time, they go, dude, if your HR department would hear, they would have if they heard what you just said today, they would have fired you. My wife the other day, she goes, yeah, I'm HR for the business. And I said, Riley, you haven't been involved enough. If you were HR, I would have been fired months ago because it all comes out on the trading floor. It all comes out. There's no hold back.
Yeah, the stories that I've heard, jokes, very inappropriate jokes. So yeah, it's all a part of the business. At the end of the day, I grew up with men and being in bands, so it's not like it was a
You're
terribly
used to
different
it.
environment for me. Yeah,
You're used
and
to
I
it.
actually quite like the banter. As long as it's not too disgusting, I
Of
will
course.
actually get involved as well.
Of
I've
course.
done my share of dirty jokes
Of course. It
over the
makes it
years.
fun. I mean, so what do you
Yeah.
think about this? Because I think successful trading, and when I'm studying successful traders like yourself and the other people at Topstep, I always like to try to take something from them. I see a lot of really good traders not taking trading super serious, not shirt and
hmm
tie, not like like corporate. They're very like loose and in the flow. How do you view that? Like, how serious should you take your trading?
Well, it should be viewed as a business, right? If you come into it and you don't have a clear loss limit, it's easier in Top Step because they give you a daily loss limit. But I always say, well, that's their loss limit. It shouldn't be
Yep.
yours.
Yep.
That's to protect, yes, you to a degree, but mainly to protect the firm from, completely
100%.
derailing the account in like
Right.
3.5 seconds, like we've seen
Right.
some people do. But
No names. No names.
no names. No, I'm not going to name anyone. So from that point of view, we have to look at trading as a business, and I think we should be serious about it. Sure, we can, joke around and stuff, but when it comes down to it, if you're trading 3 trades one day on a 1 lot, and then you come in tomorrow and then you smash in a 15 lot, and yet your stop size remains the same, that's not very good practice. And people are like, I'm not consistent. Well, I'm not surprised, because you have no consistency in your stop loss size. The number of trades you do in a day, time of day when you look for your setups, that should be a big thing. Like the way I teach people, time of day. Like why is nobody talking about that? We talked about the MOC imbalance. We know that there's additional opportunities that come within those last 10 minutes, and even 5 minutes, and even 30 seconds. So instead of kind of, looking for moves that should really happen at the end of the day, like some of those fades and big jumps off a cliff that we've seen, we shouldn't be necessarily looking for those during lunchtime. That's like, it's terrible, right? So you need
100%.
to have the right time of day when you're expecting something to happen. Crude oil is in particular very sensitive to that. Very often you will have the initial balance, then it tries to break it, then it fails that move, and it always happens around the same time. So if people are going to take anything from this, try to put the time of day to the events that you're trading, and then see how often those times of day do the same thing. Markets are very logical. They are, they have a mechanics underneath them. There's a whole centralized exchange. There's options expiries that happen all the time. So all of that plays into very similar movement at similar times of day. So to me, that's very, very important.
And that's a great answer, because I think like you're saying, you can have these, call them like guardrails. You can have
Mm-hmm.
the outline of the business in place, but then when it's in the day to day, that's maybe where you can let discretion flow a little bit
Yeah.
more. Are you just, I mean, I think you are discretionary a little bit, at least in your trading, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, anytime you have a manual trader there, it's never going to be fully systematic and mechanical,
Right.
because we're humans, we're not robots yet.
100%.
But with the with you have to start from some sort of a systematic approach.
Yes.
Yes, there's a lot of discretion deciding whether, let's say, a failed auction is okay to front run, or whether we should maybe wait for the full 30-minute close until it fails completely. So that's down to the discretionary side of things. That's not, oh yeah, let's just code around it, because I don't know whether I'm going to be getting involved because I saw something on Bookmap, or I saw, equivolume candles just failing around the 9 EMA on a very small time frame. All of that is discretionary. There's no doubt about it. But I do still consider myself a systematic trader, because I'm not going to just look at Bookmap and try and chase moves. I will have a level, and then as the price creeps up there, I might take Bookmap cues in order to front run a trade.
That makes
But at the
sense.
end of the day, I'm still looking for a clear trigger signal, probably much clearer than some people. It's been, every time I try to move away from that, it kind of smacks me on the face. It just doesn't work as well. So every time I'm kind of struggling or going into drawdown, I always try to go back to like 15-minute charts, 30-minute charts. Don't stare at Bookmap. Don't stare here, because it does get you into like this granular real-time order flow, and you can lose the plot like so quickly, especially if you've done a couple of trades and you're like, what's going on here? Come on, you're trying to minimize the stop and it's not working. And then you zoom out a bit and you're like, it's still going up.
Yep. You can get lost in the sauce very quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So from that point of view, there's definitely a systematic approach, but then whether you enter a trade or not, there is a discretionary part.
Still feel on it. Yeah. 100%.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And as market volatility increases, that discretion becomes even more important. And, experience becomes even more important because you don't want to get caught on the wrong side of something that can rip your face off. You have some really good videos on your YouTube channel about Bookmap. So I know for the listeners that want me to ask questions right now about Bookmap, I'm going to defer to Deanna's YouTube, which will be linked in the description to this. So you can just go watch, because Bookmap is fun to talk about, but you really need to see it. I advocate for saying, like, if you're trying to learn Bookmap, not only, of course, studying people that have been using it, but it's something you have to actively have on your chart while you're trading and see it, right? It's not something you can really go back and do markups on as easily as it is when it's right. So it's got to be in the moment. Start watching it, start seeing it, start feeling it.
Record the screen. Record the screen. And the way I like to teach people is to have the regular chart and then Bookmap right next to it. And then we record the screen and we see how levels work, what happens at Bookmap at the time of reversal or push through, or, whatever we want to see. Absorption, it actually has a really nice absorption indicator, but sometimes that doesn't have to mean much, because sometimes you will see like absorption of buyers and then it still goes higher. So context is very important when you're looking at those sort of micro order flow tools. I don't actually like to teach much of Bookmap. Every time people are like, should I use Bookmap? And I'm like, probably not. Maybe try to be consistent first on a slower
I was going to say, because it's a good
frame.
add-on, right? Is that what you're thinking? It helps once you have a foundation.
Yeah. So once you've been sort of profitable for a couple of years, you found some consistency, maybe you can look at something that will add on to your skill set. But, going straight into Footprint or Bookmap, it's usually a disaster. People just get over trading and they just, run accounts into the ground and they're like, oh, it's not working.
I think with the Bookmap and the level 2, that whole conversation, I think people are, like you're saying, they either turn away from it completely, like I did for a long time, because when you're trading Forex, there's no point in looking at level 2 anyway.
There's no Bookmap. There's no level 2.
There's no centralized exchange. But now when you have this, it's like, okay, now I'm here, so let me try to figure this out. And then when you start looking at it, you're like, oh my God, I get why everybody is looking at this. Like, it makes a lot of sense to pay attention to where momentum is moving, where orders are placed. What are they doing? Are they spoofing? Are the algos trying to move price? Like, there's so much more, like you said, the mechanics of the market to be seen when you're actually watching, not just candlesticks. But that brings me to my next question. Psychology. We've talked a lot about technicals, and I still have a couple of questions about your trading setup and what kind of, indicators you're using, how many screens you have and all that. We'll get to that in a second. But do you believe in trading psychology? Is it something that's worth studying, or is it something that's like, put your emotions aside, buddy, trade the system, trade the rules, get it done?
Yeah, so we have to learn to work with our emotions. Like I said before, we're not robots. There will be emotions. I think, yes, I do believe in psychology, because I think understanding the biological processes that are involved in something like the fight or flight response, that is usually the leading cause of what I call muppetiness in trading, where you just lose it completely. And then at the end of it, people are like, it's almost like it wasn't me trading. Well, it's because it wasn't. It was the primal part of you. Any emotions come from the primal side of us. And then understanding how those processes come about, that's been very helpful for me. I did have, are you really a trader if you've never had a big loss? So I did have one of my bigger losses sort of like 2 years into my initial trading career in Forex. And it really affected me. I got overconfident. And I literally ran the 90 grand that I made over the previous 18 months into the ground. Like, it wasn't terrible, because it wasn't any kind of money that I put up. It was money that I made. So it was all profits. It was still tragic because it was horrible.
Still awful, right?
Yeah.
But taught you a lot,
it feels like
sure.
second death. Yeah. It's awful.
It is.
But then it sort of put me onto the path of psychology and to find out why it happened to me. So yes, I do believe in psychology, but I think some people go to psychology first, like without actually having a good system. They don't have good levels, nothing is working, and then they're like, oh, it's my psychology. It's not your psychology. You're using a flawed method. So you need to improve your levels first. Then if that doesn't sort it out, we can look at psychology. And it's remarkable how many times I set the structure in place with some of these areas and levels that we look at that are based on actual market generated information, how much psychology suddenly isn't a problem. So yes, there's definitely an argument to say that psychology does matter, but going to psychology too soon can also be very detrimental.
Right, because it basically doesn't matter. I would agree with you. It's not even just what I see too is it's flawed strategy or strategy hopping. They're bouncing between, they're taking too many different types of trades to know which one they should be leaning into more. So then of course they start questioning their psychology because they're like, nothing is working. But I've seen this work for Austin and this works for Deanna. Right. There's no consistency. So people, they want consistent payouts from Topstep, but their approach is inconsistent. How's that make sense? That's 2 + 2 = 6. That's not going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. I had somebody during the London session who said, oh yeah, you know, you teach us how to do a plan and we plan all this out. But then when I start trading, I turn into a complete lunatic. And I'm like, well, that's a different problem.
That is a little bit of a different problem.
Yeah.
But you know what, I find, I mean, people, they trade from, unfortunately, poor positions. They just lost their job and now they think trading's going to supplement that. It's a terrible place to try to, it's like almost the worst.
Yeah. Yeah, that's bad. I had a couple of people who did come to me for coaching, and I had to say no to them because they were like trading with scared money. You know, they're like, "Oh, I can't afford a combine," and I'm like, "Dude, if you can't afford like $49 or even 150, you know, 149, like
it's
what are you doing?
Probably not a good time
life?
To be trading. Yeah, you need to go get your other stuff in order. Trading is not ready for you.
And also, much of the stuff that you do in your personal life with your personal finances is a direct reflection of how you're going to behave as a trader. Only on 100%. Like steroids, because that's 100%. What it is. It's money management on speed.
Yep. And it's in the same sense. Once you have more money, you have your, you know, other income or you got savings, you get better at money management because you're not managing it from a position of stress, right? You can actually make good decisions that don't have to be fulfilled with that instant gratification. Whereas if you have to pay rent this month, you need it right now. And how often have you seen a person trade with need to make rent this month and then they actually make it? No, they end up losing.
No, they end up losing because if you're looking for a trade and all you can think about is where's my mortgage payment coming from? Where's my mortgage payment? It's like you're not looking for a setup. You're totally not money. Even that. You're looking for money. It's like you're better off starting, you know, an OnlyFans or something. Although that's
you're absolutely right. As well. You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
Okay, so Finder might be an option.
Feed Finder might be. Put your feet up on the desk and take the picture while you're with the screens in the background. Right. All right. Good. Great answer. Talk to me a little bit about indicators, because you mentioned you have a team that helps you build some indicators. What are you working with and what kind of platforms are you looking at? You got how many screens we got behind you right now?
I've got about 4 screens here. That's my usual setup. When I'm traveling, because I do go to Belgrade, visit my mom every few weeks or so, I have a laptop with multiple screens. So I have one of those Team G things that you can kind of hook it up on the side. So that's a 3-screen setup, but it's very compact. It's very easy to carry. So I usually have either 3 or 4 screens at all times. Right now, the 4th screen is more there because we're doing Topstep TV, so you have to have, you know, the team on one side and whatever producers want to tell you, you know how it is already. But yeah, the screens are always at least 3. With the indicators, I suppose I have 3 main indicators. That's the Blotech Market Profile. Blotech is my firm, my software development company. So Blotech Market Profile, Blotech DR, which is daily ranges and session range averages. And the third one, I suppose it will be the supply and demand, Blotech SD. So those 3 are like the main 3 that I kind of can't live without. Although, you know, you can always live without an indicator. It's not like, you know, but it just makes the automation much easier. So instead of me sitting here and, you know, drawing zones and, you know, getting the time series data into Excel and then aggregating that to get my average session and daily ranges, it automates the whole process down from a few hours to a few clicks. And as I was developing my own methods, I tried finding software indicators that would do that for me. There was nothing. You had these like awkward profile indicators on, I mean, even Bloomberg terminal, it just looks terrible. It's just so messy. It looks like it was made in the 80s.
Right.
Very difficult to find things. Everything's buried in sub menus. So I was like, I want to have it on the candlestick chart. So that's what you see. And I am using AMP Futures MetaTrader 5 because I come from Forex and I kind of stuck with MetaTrader. I'm a bit set in my ways. We're actually doing some work to translate all of the main indicators into Ninja.
Nice.
So one of the problems with TradingView, I get a lot of requests to get Blatic indicators into TradingView, but the problem is it uses PineScript. It's not a true object-oriented language. And therefore you can't really use certain more sophisticated technologies to kind of point to a certain variable in a kind of different area of code and stuff. It just doesn't
know that. That makes sense. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And we also have the backtest mode on the chart. So if you click a button, it kicks off the backtest mode, and then I can see all the levels. It doesn't erase the candles, but you can see all the levels as it was happening. So if you go back a day, and then you see the auction, you see the break, you see how the price reacted around the average daily or session ranges, when it broke them, exhausted them, whether it was reactive. And you can kind of do a quick backtest to see what worked, what didn't work, without having to, do a ritual dance to actually, do that in some other platforms. So that's 100%. Something I wanted. And when I first came to the software architect with that idea, he was like, "You want it on the chart?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, can we do it?" And he was like, "Maybe." And it took him like a year before we came up with a way to do it. So now we have it. I don't know. I mean, I can only assume that Ninja is similar because it is C#. It's like, and MetaTrader is like based on C#. It's like their own version of it, but that's what it is. So it offers a lot of flexibility. That's why we stuck with it. And that's why, unfortunately, at this time, I just can't translate the indicators into TradingView. There's just no technology.
Yeah. So when you're looking at these setups, what I take from that is the indicators are not telling you to take the trade. And that's what I want our listeners to take. Okay. So the indicators are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're giving you a easy and quick way to see the information that's happened previously, so you can make a good decision yourself. And I think that's what our listeners need to understand is like, there are very few, and some traders will argue with me, but I think there's very few indicators that you should be relying on to take trigger signals, to actually take the position. Cool. Okay, good. So we're on the same page. Some of the people in the comments will always rip me up when I say this. They're like, "No, I trade this 8 EMA cross or this VWAP." It's like,
it works every time.
No, nothing works every time. You put anyone that says that, I'm like, "Oh, this guy's been trading for a week. He has no idea."
Exactly. It's like, just wait.
Just exactly. Wait. You'll learn. Right.
Yeah, you'll learn.
And that was kind of, it's funny you say that. That stems me into my next question, because what we've seen this last 2 weeks, especially on ES and NQ, markets have picked up volatility immensely, right? We were moving 30 points a day on ES for weeks, and now we're moving 30 points in 2 minutes. So when volatility changes and market conditions change, because you have a lot of experience with this, and I'm almost done my first 10 years of trading. I started almost 10 years ago. I kind of now, 10 years into it, feel like I'm finally seeing what they mean of like different market cycles, different strategies, different ways to play different markets, what's going on. So how could you advise some of the newer people to use indicators or to use the tools to help them identify as market conditions change so that they know they need to change? Just a quick example. A lot of our guys have shifted from minis to micros. Just simple like that.
Yeah, because it allows you to control risk. I think it's better to understand something like maybe looking at an average of ATR over a number of candles on the time frame that you're trading. So like, let's say you take 10 or 20 candles prior, and then it's going to work out exactly what the ATR of that period is. So you can start to base your stop losses on that. So if the market goes crazy, and I actually do pretty well in volatile markets, I actually struggle when there's not enough volatility. That's why I ran away from Forex. And every time something locks down, I'm just like, oh God, not this again. I hate it. But when everything picks up, I love it, because that means you enter a trade, it's going to move.
Right.
And you're not going to sit there for 2 hours going, come on, come on.
Right. Bringing up PTSD for us Forex traders.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'm so happy I'm out of that. And whoever comes to me and I trade Forex, and I'm like, why?
Sorry. So keep going. So you were going to say first step.
So the first step would be to have some gauge of what sort of ranges are we working with. I see a lot of people who stick with the same stop loss sizes, do or die. So I use 20 points on NQ. That's great.
You get ripped. You're gonna get ripped.
So you're not going to last a second. So is that what we're doing? No, we need a systematic way. This is where the systematic approach comes in handy. I use a simple formula of looking at what is the average session range, how much have we increased or decreased, and then if it's a market difference, I would change the stop loss size and lower the position size, maybe go to micros. I had that in gold. Was it March, April? Gold went nuts. It went from 100 ticks per day to like 350, 400, 500. It was insane with all the Middle East stuff that was going on. So obviously I couldn't, normally I like to use about 35 ticks on gold, and I was trading minis, and that's 350 a pop. If you get your face ripped off, that's what you lose. But in that same environment, the same pattern, same everything, but the volatility is greater. Well, suddenly I would have to risk 1,000. And I'm like, that's unacceptable. So I went to micros.
Yep.
And, I was able to increase the stop size. And in a way, it's sort of easier because micros don't elicit the same emotional response. So you can actually stay in trades longer. And I was like smashing it. I had like, I think it was like 14 days where I was just like, smashing it. Big trades in gold, taking like 260 ticks out of it. Easy, right?
Yep.
But it was all micros. It was like 3 to 5 micros. So still making like 800, $1,000 a day.
Just being more flexible in your position size. So that way you can deal with the volatility. And you think average, so because you mentioned already today, average true range, and you mentioned average daily range. Do you use them both?
Yeah. So the average true range would be more to kind of determine the stop loss size. If a trader is not using anything else, that's like the basics. You have to see what the ATR of the period that you're trading is currently at. Otherwise, we don't have a good reference.
Sure.
But the average daily ranges, I use them in several ways. So the one way that I use it is as a level, right? If we get to it, there's a pretty decent chance that we're going to start reversing away from it. Not always, because if you have a higher volatility day, that can then bring me to the next point where you effectively see that we have a larger volatility day. Because what it is, it's a volatility measure, and people frequently forget that. They're like ATR, but it's a volatility measure, right? Measure of how are we doing? Are we smashing through it, completely ignoring it? That's one piece of information. And if you do see that, and you also see that the market is just smashing in one direction, maybe don't go against that. Just because there's an ADR high or low there doesn't mean you have to fade the top or bottom. It's not what it's for. So if it smashes through it, totally ignores it, that's a different piece of information. So yes, 100%. It can be used as a level. It can be used to gauge your stop loss size, and it can be used as a measure of volatility as well.
Do you ever use VWAP? I hear you occasionally mention it, I feel like.
Yeah, there are times. I mean, I always have it on my chart because it's a very simple way to figure out, especially for like the London session, how far away do we move from it, or do we move at all? Because a lot of the times London Open is just a nothing burger,
and it's close to the VWAP. Like, but then when it moves away from that VWAP, you might get interested for a mean reversion play back to the VWAP. Right.
Correct. Right. Yeah. But not always. Sometimes you might. Sometimes you want to run a momentum trade from it as well. Through
of course.
It,
of course. Do you use like a standard deviation off the VWAP to kind of find when
sometimes it's more of a kind of helper thing that I also have on my chart, but it wouldn't be like, oh, D is taking a trade because we're in a second standard deviation zone.
No, it has to do all these other things that we talked about.
Yeah, so it has to hit the value area, it has to hit some of my other levels that are completely nothing to do with VWAP or standard deviation bands. And that tends to work for me better rather than just looking at kind of granular standard deviation volatility bands. But yeah, I do always have them because I think they're a useful measure for certain times. I find them the most useful on range-bound days. So if you're looking for a good range-bound trade, you want to make sure that you're nowhere near the middle and that you're nowhere near VWAP. And in fact, you want to use VWAP as a target.
Right. That's exactly what I do. One of my favorite trades right now, I'll trade from the 15-minute opening range, the bottom of that level, to the middle of the range, which would be the New York Open VWAP, and that's a great first take profit. And I'll try to trail a stop from there.
It's an awesome trade. I like to do that as well, but I like to wait until we pop the initial balance first.
Yeah,
and then it gives you a bigger.
I was going to say about an initial balance. I know you know about Edgeful and the guys over there because they've been on top. They put up a stat. I think it was on NQ that if the initial balance. Once the initial balance is set, it 70% of the time, I think, it only breaks one side and holds that one. That's a pretty good edge. That's crazy.
It's a really good edge. So you can use it in twofold. I actually had somebody asking me that. I think just yesterday on Fast
Really?
Markets.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, we were just talking about that. So I dragged it out, and it turned out that ES, or was it NQ? I think it was more like 77% over the
NQ is
last.
higher. Yeah, it's closer to
Yeah, it's
80%. I think you're right.
crazy. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then I think Hogue asked me, how would you use that? Or was it Andre? So I said, well, if you have a break that sustains, maybe don't try and fade it. But at the same time, if you're doing a failed auction, maybe don't do a full rotation through to the other
Exactly.
side. Cut it off earlier. Because you're not going to get a break 77% of the time. So that's how you use stats.
And it will happen, everybody, right?
Like,
happen, no matter what, Edge will tell you there's 80% things, 90% things, and that 10% will still happen, just not that often, you know? And that's why position sizing and risk management are so important in trading. And that's where,
also, when you're looking at a setup, whatever is happening, if you have those kind of stats that you're tracking, when you have those lower probability days and you don't do well on them, you can just pitch it to the lower probability occurrence.
Oh my God, 100%.
Whereas people are like, oh, I suck. Oh, we all suck.
No, it's broken. I have to change everything. No. You have to settle in and get consistent. Yes, play the probabilities. Nothing works 100%. 100%. Deanna, this was like the fastest hour ever. I love all this information. I took a ton of notes. I got a ton of good little takeaways from this. I really appreciate it. I'm going to link the YouTube channel down below. Yep. My final question for you. Well, first, we're going to let everybody know. I know you're on social media as well, so we'll have those links too. Final question. We don't have to play favorites, but out of everybody that you've worked with at Topstep, who do you think is your favorite trader?
Ooh, okay.
I have a guess in my head. I'm saying it in my head who I think you're going to say. We'll see if I'm right.
Well, I think it's going to be a bit of an obvious choice because I did learn from him, Hogue. So
that's what I was going to say. I could tell you guys have good chemistry. I can tell, like, you guys feed each other really well.
Yeah, because Hogue, I took lessons from Hogue like a million years ago.
Wow.
And we became friends through that. And when I was first funded with them, we had a lot of they used to have this like private messaging system, and he was the risk manager. So we used to talk like every day, all the time about a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, we just kind of developed the friendship, but also that familiarity with like similar strategies. He even took on some of my supply and demand ideas.
There you go. That was like student becomes the teacher.
Yeah, and he keeps saying that as well. But it's just learning from people around you. It's
staying open-minded. Yes, 100%. I think that's something I love about you and Hogue and Eddie and all the guys there, Andre, everybody. Like, no one is like, this is the way, and this is the way you have to do. Everybody's like, well, try this. This might help you. And then you could be like, nah, I don't like that. Or you could be like, no, I actually do like that. Let me take some of that. So that's the open-mindedness, and that type of environment is like, I think why Topstep TV and why Topstep is so popular. And I also got to give Topstep a shout out. Like the fact that they've had Hogue there for so long and Eddie there, like Topstep, they've got a good team. Like you're a part of the team now. I'm a part of the team. We're a little newer than them, but like those guys, to keep them all together for a long time is very special. Very respectable. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. So awesome. Deanna, this has been fantastic. So everybody can find you. I know Market Stalkers on YouTube. Is that where we want to push everybody mainly to the YouTube channel and the socials?
That's probably the easiest. I mean, you say I'm on social media, but I'm pretty terrible with everything
else.
No,
you answered my thing on Twitter. Come on, you're good on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. I'm on Twitter, but I
Twitter's
post a
better
lot of
than
random
Instagram
stuff.
is a bunch of BS. Like, let's be honest. Instagram is BS. Like I do it because I have to. I hate it. Twitter, you have real conversations with people. Twitter's a lot better. You know what the cool thing about Twitter is? I found some live traders with Topstep, guys that have live accounts that have like no following. I have them coming up on the podcast after you actually in a couple. Yes. And it's like, that's the guy I want to talk to. He has no social media presence. He does nothing like for influencer stuff, but he knows how to trade. Like that's where I'm getting into. People like you, people like him. That's where our show is really finding a lot of value for the listeners.
Well, send them in the messages because I'm always on the lookout to follow good traders. It's always a good story, always nice to be in touch with everybody, and especially if they're already live. That means they're always have humble. The skills.
Those guys are always very humble. The influencers are the guys that are like, I'm the best. Look at my car. It's like, relax,
look at my Lambo.
Relax, relax.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like Patak says, go sit in your car.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Deanna, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Listeners, thank you guys so much for staying all the way through. Like I said at the beginning, if you would love to hear from Deanna in detail on any of the topics we talked about, or maybe something we didn't talk about, hit the comments on YouTube. We'll make sure to touch on those questions in part 2. But for now, we'll put a pin in it. Deanna, thank you. Listeners, thank you. Make sure you guys are subscribed, and we'll see you in the next episode, everybody.